Hello everyone. I think everyone's probably just as excited as I am about this new release by Sphere and Sundry. It's Spica. Some pronounce it Spica. I guess Spica is probably the most accurate to Latin pronunciation, but most people pronounce it Spica, and so that's how we're going to pronounce it throughout Kaitlin Coppock's write-up for this particular series. So let's take a look. Buckle up for the most technically and gnostically immersive write-up ever. Spica would have it no other way. The TLDR is Spica brings wealth, prosperity, liberation, and good fortune to the worthy, helping one overcome contention and secure legal rulings. It gladdens and inspires, sharpening our mental and spiritual faculties while promoting artfulness, craftsmanship, and mastery. It is excellent for all creative labors and manifestation magic, and widely considered the most benefic star the night sky has to offer. Let's take a quick look through these materia that Sphere and Sundry have produced for us. I recommend going to check the description of the video to get a link directly to this page so you can pick up any of these products for yourself. All right, looking very, very lovely indeed. And let's get reading. Spica was supposed to launch weeks ago. I am neck deep in an energetic complex which feels, quite frankly, profoundly endless. Like Spica's been the alpha and the omega underpinning all of living existence and natural magic this entire time, but I'm just now finding out. And how on earth am I supposed to do that justice? I'm exhausted from editing, airing our first hypnotic healing attunements, finally making manifest l'étoile, and the last thing I have to do, should I say, did immediately before Spica, can you tell it took forever to write this, is as dauntingly significant and high stakes as the task writing this write-up and putting her talismans and materia into the world feels like, or worse. And yet, Spica has the answer. She always does, apparently. Chop wood, carry water. Or, more within the realm of our devotional arcana, till soil, plant seed, and let nature take her course. Let powers beyond us take the wheel from there. Only ever so often does human intervention behoove a natural process, which all growth is, which all creation is, and yet there is tons and tons of heavy lifting the humans must do, literally and metaphorically. Which is why Ptolemy states Spica is primarily of the nature of Venus, and to a lesser extent Mars. Terra Biblos, Book 1. Though more commonly in most sources, Venus with Mercury, and sometimes Venus and Jupiter. What can we say? Our girl is multifaceted, though we are getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe you've heard just enough to know you probably want Spica in your sphere, because she's famous for being one of the most beneficent stars, if not the most benefic, the palette of our night sky has to offer. That was essentially as informed as I had been before. Now, I knew of Spica as the Virgin's spike in the constellation of Virgo, which delighted me to no end given the anatomical inference and dissonance with the whole concept of virginity as relates to dicks, but such is a nod to absolute feminine potency, to parthenogenesis, which stems from the Greek word for virgin, and creation, known more colloquially throughout cultural Christendom as immaculate conception. There's no keeping this write-up streamlined. It's too magical. Spica is not actually one star, but two, like Algol, the most malefic star, and Antares, the most martial star. It is a binary set that revolves around one another which registers to us on Earth as a single brilliant point. The brightest in Virgo and 16th brightest overall, 1900 times that of our Sun, visually speaking, but due to especially high levels of ultraviolet radiation, emits much more invisible light than can even be perceived. The two hot blue luminaries can be differentiated only by their spectra, which we'll come back to later, and are egg-shaped because of their pull on one another. Eggs, of course, having to do with the feminine mysteries, the womb itself, creation, incubation, fecundity, and the growing season, as well as birth. And birds, a primary key to the Spican arcana, who supply the eggs many people eat for breakfast the world over. Spica gifts foodstuff, wheat for the toast, and corn for the masa, and are born from them. Who make feathers, which were one of the original writing implements. To find Spica, it is said, from the Big Dipper, to arc to Arcturus, double that distance, then spike or speed straight to Spica. Our shimmering patroness is the lowermost anchor of several important asterisms, a term which means collection of stars which form figure-like patterns. These are distinct from constellations, which are 88 defined nation-state-like star groupings. Map second image below. There we go. The Big Dipper, for instance, is an asterism within the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Tracing from Spica to Regulus, maps closely along the path of the Sun, also called the ecliptic. These are two of the brightest, closest stars to that line, Regulus being the closest of any. Stars such as these are occulted by the moon regularly and are easy for Earthlings to magically access. Connecting from Spica and Regulus to Arcturus creates a closed pattern known as the large spring triangle, which, if one substitutes Denebola, another star in Leo, for Regulus, forms the small spring triangle. This perfect pyramid is also the lower half of the Great Diamond, or the Virgin's Diamond, when extended upward to include Cor Caroli. The bowl of Virgo becomes what I have called the Virgin's Chalice when elongated to include Spica, and if you go from there straight up to Zeta Virginis, that line is regarded as the horn of the azure dragon in the Chinese system. The ecliptic, the sun's path, is an important thing in astrology because it's where we get the signs which comprise our zodiac from, out of those 88 constellations which have been mapped overall. And it's especially important in this write-up because of Spica's unique relationship to both the ecliptic and the sidereal zodiac. Side note, you can see above why Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, gets play every once in a while, as the only constellation the ecliptic includes, which isn't part of our named zodiac. And you can also observe physically where some of Scorpio's lore around being subterranean and hidden comes from. I find it fascinating that the serpent bearer, aka Asclepius, and its brightest star, Ras al-Haig, show up so prominently in relationship to the world, and indeed magical texts and practice, just not in the way modern materialists who write gotcha articles about astrology say so. Back to our regularly scheduled Spica broadcast, sort of. Spica is responsible for the discovery of the phenomenon known as precession. When in 127 BC, Hipparchus observed that the star had moved 2 degrees compared to previous data on its location. Let this serve as a confirmation of the star's relationship to science, mathematics, record-keeping, writing, printing, and innovation. Precession, like the ecliptic, also relates to misunderstandings about the zodiac in terms of comparing the Western to the Vedic, and which of the two is correct. In actuality, they are simply different things used for different types of astrology. Truth is primarily a matter of intricacy and perspective, And what matters above all is sheer utility, that one chooses the right tool for the right job and has mastered using it. The difference is that the tropical zodiac is based on the sun's movement, starting with the vernal, March equinox, marking 0 degrees Aries, and is therefore seasonal and geocentric, determined entirely by the Sun-Earth relationship. This initiates the spring planting season in one earthly hemisphere and the autumnal harvest in our other. Whereas the sidereal zodiac is often referred to as stellar, defined in the standard default Lahiri Ayanamsha by the position of, drumroll, Spica, which the Vedics call Chitra, marking 0 degrees Libra, which is then projected opposite to locate the start of Aries. Note that not all sidereal zodiacs do it this way. There are many types. The Lahiri is just the most common, and the Lahiri is not the only Chitra Ayanamsha either. Our own sun is just as much a star as Spica, so it's not quite fair to say that the sidereal zodiac is stellar and ours isn't. It's just a question of which star gets priority, which layer or plane of the firmament one is exploring. The interior of our own solar system, or what lies beyond it. In one sense, the theoretical opposition between the sun as ruler of Aries and the tropical zodiac versus Spica as a signifier of Libra, Virgo, and the sidereal mirrors what each one specializes in, and even what the two cultures who primarily utilize them value. One is more agentic, self-centered, and willful, preferring to see astrology as a tool to be used for the individual's self-exploration, if at all, juxtaposed by a greater exterior force which reigns supreme and relates to karmic causation, something to be delicately, meticulously, and often purposefully adjusted via spiritual and worldly action. Astrology being more of a given in the Vedic worldview, while commonly looked down upon by the Western elites and mainstream. The self versus the scales, or crudely, fate versus free will. Chitra refers to both the star Spica and that of the 14th nakshatra, which contains it, and partially because it is responsible for starting the default sidereal zodiac, and partly because of Indra's net more soon. It is held that the entire zodiac is made from Chitra, in the words of Mr. Cole. The Vedic lore on Chitra is so rich and instructive, and the Picatrix, the Bible of astrological magic, tells its reader to look to the Indians for many of their spiritual technologies because they are innately so much better at it than everyone else. See Chapter 5. It is astromagical canon to seek the Vedic take on such matters, and it is why Austin and many others have become bizodiacal in the first place. Always, I digress. While the star is located at 24 degrees tropical Libra due to precession, it resides in the middle of its nakshatra, meaning sidereally it straddles half of practical analytic Virgo and artistic diplomatic Libra. As such, it represents the marriage of beauty with craftsmanship, form with function, and what is lindy with technological progress, regarded as a bright gem or pearl who is called the shining one, precious, bejeweled, and decorated. It has to do with raising and sourcing materials and exalting them through artful effort. A diamond mined raw from the earth does not shine and shimmer in the same way it will after being cut, faceted, and polished to perfection by a trained hand and eye, after being competently crafted into a composition that catches and refracts the light just so. Are diamonds inherently valuable, especially in the rough? Some more than others for their ultimate potential, their clarity, color, and size, but Spica has to do with value added, with innovation, craft, and artistry, the perfection of form. In this sense, it relates to the creation of things which are not only pretty, but useful and finished. Grade A raw materials are better things to begin with than any subpar or conventional one. But value-added tax, VAT, is a concept for a reason, and a Spica one at that. No chef ever on a cooking show waxes poetic about loving to work with old bug-eaten ingredients past their prime, like they do freshly picked, organic, heirloom produce. But a bad cook or a bad diamond cutter can take the finest natural ingredient the world has ever seen and still ruin it. To make something better because you touched it is a rare and valuable skill set indeed. It is much easier and more common to simply make things worse. Diamonds, recall the Virgin's diamond asterism anchored to Spica, have many scientific, industrial, and commercial applications, beyond being the subject of one of the greatest marketing ops of the 20th century, though to be fair, being Venus's jewel does pre-incline them to marital relations, including writing and etching on any less hard surface. Gems have been used as pen nibs in speakers, supercomputing, and for beautification via microdermabrasion, polishing the skin. All matters of Spican import. It's also fascinating how lab-grown diamonds are getting lots of attention for impacting the diamond market. The ability to grow diamonds in a lab is, beyond it involving a gem, a Spican innovation because all technology is inherently Chitran, and illusion is another core theme of Chitra's lore. Which makes it interesting that jewels can be man-made relatively cost-effectively since they are common composites formed by special conditions, recreatable in labs, or farmed for pearls, whereas metals are more difficult to simulate as rare base elements themselves. Worthy of mention since gems and metals are the primary material foundation of the talismanic astrological tradition and channel energies quite effectively as the skeletal and organ systems that transmit astral energies into our planet. Synthetic man-made simulations, however, are not spiritually alive or energetically efficacious in the same way something formed in the belly of the earth over the course of thousands of millions of years is. Like the difference between the doing of actual magic and the performance of stage magic, which is why lab-made stones are never used for remedial applications. Creation includes wolves and sheep's clothing, and one of Chitra's lessons is to never forego our critical faculties. A reckoning headed like a comet for those seeking spiritual benefits from the perfume industry, which has become dominated by Rahu-ruled, petroleum-based synthetics almost exclusively. For more on this, see the Natural Fragrance and Spiritual Consideration tabs here. One of the things Chitra teaches, in addition to magic itself, a thing almost every great scientific thinker in history also studied, is that appearances are not always as they seem. Something must look right, smell right, and act right, or it ain't the real thing. Though, let it be known that diamonds are not the only gem associated with Spica. They are simply queen of the radiant, light-reflecting gems in general, and governed by Venus, co-ruler of the star's nature. Other go-to stones are Mercury-ruled emerald and pearl. Pearls are interesting because, as detailed in Jupiter in Cancer's write-up, they begin as a tiny speck of abundant, cheap, raw material, a grain of sand. irritating the oyster, which gets built into this luminous, precious thing born from the sheer practicality of attempting to quarantine it. Probably discovered because someone engaged in the infinitely utilitarian act of eating one day. Oysters being the metaphorical egg of the pearl, and pearls being the gems of the sea. And then thought, oh, pretty. What if I made adornments out of it? The process of creating pearls mirrors the artistic process, which is the result of the seed of a thing or idea being discovered, meditated upon, planted, built upon, and honed all the way into being. They are also symbols of divine truth and knowledge, in addition to the preciousness of life and complete prosperity nature provides. Chitra, the nakshatra, is ruled primarily by two Hindu deities that are somewhat synchronized as earlier and later versions of the same power, but with differing lore depending on when they're being talked about. The similarities are obvious. The earliest is Tvasta, a primordial crafts god given credit for the creation of all living beings, and also specifically wombs. He is regarded as an ancestor to humans and is the guardian of the Soma, the immortal elixir upon which all other gods, even Indra, king of the Devas, father or brother, depending on who you ask, rely. Tvasta also crafted Indra's perfect form, the whole of his body, and imbued it with manly courage, in addition to outfitting him with his thousand-edged thunderbolt, Indra's Vajra, which earned him renown and supremacy. This, according to the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas, which goes on to share stories that boil down to Tvasta and Indra fought a number of times, despite how indebted and reliant Indra was towards his creator, but Indra always won. And Indra ended up having to slay a bunch of demons who tried to build a stairway to actual heaven within Chitra. Since Indra foiled them, he too is associated with the nakshatra's beneficence. The other, more modern ruler, Tvasta's natural evolutionary extension, is Vishwakarma, who Austin quickly explained as a more pivotal, elegant Hephaestus, the divine architect, carpenter, mechanic, and fabricator who produced all created things, but notably the dwellings, weapons, and chariots of the Devas, including Shiva's trident, again Indra's Vajra, and wooden Soma bowl, and perhaps most significantly in regards to Spica, Indra's bejeweled net, which we'll still come back to. Doing internet research brought me to one of the most fruitful, detailed, and humble of Spican resources, this random Facebook post with one like from 2017, which states, "He is said to be an adept of Maya, the illusory force which keeps alive the drama of life. Vishwakarma uses his knowledge of Maya to create, mutate, and fashion new forms out of the pre-existing ones, an act which seems like magic to others. Chitra is the architect of the universe and thus relates closely to Brahma, the creator among the Holy Trinity. In fact, Vishwakarma is one of Brahma's direct, mind-born sons. Chitra conceals within itself the laws and arrangement of the universe on all planes of existence. Chitra is considered to be an active nakshatra. This does not come as a surprise, as Chitra's main motto is to simply create, create, and create. It is hyperactive and indefatigable. It constantly moves from one creative project to the next. In its positive aspect, this quality makes it hardworking and efficient, but in a negative aspect, it makes it obsessive and blind to the true meaning and function of life. Pearls, as we know, are formed in an oyster's moments of irritation, in much the same way art comes out of the artist's moments of irritation and depression. Chitra is thus related to the mysterious essence behind creativity, using its clear understanding of the laws of the universe. It has the ability to fashion new, wonderful, and delightful things out of seemingly nothing at all. In its higher aspect, Chitra allows one to see beyond the illusion of form, thus giving access to the pearl of true knowledge. Spica is associated with the Western magical tradition with gladness and laughter, but it does not, in my own experience, or those of the artisans, craftspeople at work on this release, immunize against the toll that creative ambition and the pursuit of excellence take. On the contrary, the process is laborious and draining, and indeed sometimes depressing. It's just that life itself is also laborious, draining, and sometimes depressing, so you may as well make something exquisite of the experience if you have that potentiality within you. Spica rules over things whose final form is superb, but it does not promise that they will come easy or be fast. Truly, excellence is typically painstakingly slow to produce. The Sistine Chapel's ceiling took Michelangelo 4 years to paint, and he hated the process so much he wrote a poem about it. And the Mona Lisa took anywhere between 4 to 16 years for Leonardo da Vinci to finish. What Spica does do is take the bite out of suffering and get you moving forward. Whenever I've been feeling down about all that's before me, when I've put Spica on, it's improved my mood and ability to function. It does improve material and mental conditions, but it's no guarantee for easy, fast, or timely delivery. And, crucially, it is not a Venus series. If you want a Spike and Venus series, we actually have one called Venus's Aerial Delight, and it is exquisite, and it will layer very well with this. Someone wrote us, concerned about Venus in Virgo in the 12th house of this election, citing its fallen debility and ruling the first of the chart. Would it be ideal if those weren't the case? Sure, maybe. But elections are always trade-offs, and a seasoned artist understands their subject as well as their medium. And Venus and Mercury are not only in mutual reception with one another when placed in Virgo and Libra, the two key planets and signs associated with Spica, they are also in perfect anticia with one another. The moon is in exact applying aspect to an exalted Jupiter in the midheaven, conjunct Spica. Spica, the power whose election this is, whom the prayers were for, and whose correspondences were used. We did not propitiate Venus. Note also that Venus in Virgo isn't malefic, it's just not terribly enjoyable for Venus. I can speak with some degree of authority on this because my own Venus and Mercury match those of this election, and any of my guests can confirm I host a killer dinner party. I'll just be in the kitchen cooking, serving, and cleaning up most of the time rather than enjoying the gathering. The food will be excellent. The environment, beautifully pristine. The conversation, witty, and laughter will abound, but it's because work was devoted to making it more notable than run-of-the-mill dinner parties. Such is not a problem for a Spica election. Spica's job is to work, to produce. And Venus in Virgo produces beautiful things and beautiful experiences, often, for others. Venus and Mercury working together is one of the actual literal points of Spica. It is desirable that the two are in such close-knit relationship, and Venus being the 12th is why this series trips such Gnostic balls. Spica doesn't have a problem operating from the 12th. Creation is largely a subconscious or unconscious process, but it still helps to understand its mechanisms. It is useful for inducing instructive dreams, visions, and downloads. Chitra is everywhere, and the wheat can't plant and harvest itself. The 12thness is likely why this write-up involves such a surgical, yet nuanced, deep dive into the mysteries of Spica rather than rehashing the same basic top notes people think they know about such a magically foundational star. Note, however, that the moon conjunct Spica rules the 10th house, and Jupiter in Cancer on the midheaven. Election chart and more details below. Freedom Cole in Science of Light Volume 1 says of Vishwakarma and Chitra, bold emphasis and emerald inline are mine. His name literally means the all, Vishva, worker, Karmin. So he relates to work and production, which he has tremendous energy to accomplish. He is an Aditya, who has the power to bring resources into our lives. He is sometimes considered an incarnation of Brahma as the manifest form of the world creator who makes all things. This we'll explore in depth on May 20th. These natives are known to be honorable, mani, especially when they use their energy for community service or to perform karma yoga. In this way, these natives can become great karmic yogis. Propitiation of Vishwakarma gives the blessings of children, similar to Brahma, Aldebaran, and the Pitars, Regulus. Chitra means to be painted and represents the ornamentation the native either wears or creates. It may also indicate that visual mediums and imagery play an important role in their lives. Natives of this star are known to wear nice clothing and jewellery, either made by themselves or with an eye paid to detail in the craftsmanship of the item. This launch had me eyeing jewellery of a new style, something my fallen Venus Ketu doesn't typically enjoy wearing. Chitra also refers to the future projections we make for our life and is linked to the dhyana yoga aspect of meditation. Did develop a practice this cycle of nightly meditations to the point of visionary experiences via binaural beats and launched the hypnotic attunements intended to guide others through meaningful meditations using the same. Vishwakarma is all about planning, figuring out what and how to build. The entire zodiac is actually built from Chitra, and this is why the Ayanamsa comes from this star. When the sun was too bright for his wife, Vishwakarma trimmed. Honing and pruning our Spica things. To achieve perfection, one must typically trim the fat or sort the wheat from the chaff. 1/8 of his rays. From this, he made the discus of Vishnu, the trident of Shiva, the spear of Kartikeya, and all the weapons of the other gods. These natives can be skilled artisans working with metals and stones, marble, gems, and jewellery. They find success in careers related to this type of work or weaving, sewing, fashion design, interior decoration, architecture, engineering, mathematics, machines, creating new things, or making old things better. The body of these natives is generally well-formed, with good features, as they have received the blessings of the divine architect himself. They can also be very secretive, as a craftsman keeps his private life separate from his work. Natives of this star enjoy learning to constantly expand themselves. Let it be known that one does not need to be a native to partake of the benefits of Chitra Nakshatra. They can use high-quality Spican talismans and materia such as these to tap her thick, pulsating veins of pure, golden, world-building potential. Though it feels appropriate to disclose that I myself am a Chitra sun, with Spica heliacally rising, just as we offered up the Mr. as our living, breathing example of Jupiter in Cancer. In this case, unfortunately for my secretive nature, we have moi. But it's honestly a pretty good example. My design imprint, for years before all this, was called Form and Function Web Production. And Sphere and Sundry is nothing if not a buffet of visual and technical spectacle, making the old new again via innovation for the times, precision, efficacy, being of genuine service, and natural, actual magic. And I created and conducted the Thema Mundi operation, and we craft goods from plant matter and convert gems and metals into utilitarian, magically operant jewellery. It almost doesn't get more classically Chitran. Exploring some Western lore, Spica is commonly seen as the sheaf of wheat or ear of corn in the Virgin Maiden's left hand. The constellation itself, that of Virgo, is always regarded as a supremely important goddess, known by different names in different times by different people. Isis to the Egyptians, where Spica can signify a lute. Note, Spica relates to music. Shala to the Sumerians, Vesta to the Romans, and to the Greeks, Hestia, Dike, called Justice when sired by Zeus and Themis, one of the three Horae and sister of Irene, and Astrea, the starry one, when brought forth by Astreus and Eos. Gratitude to Spican native Ariadna Felix for connecting Spica's significations to the goddess Oshun in the Ifa Yoruban traditions, who similarly aligns with wealth, world-building, and creativity. From Pseudo-Hygienius, Astronomica, Book 2, Chapter 25, translation Grant, Roman mythographer, 2nd century AD, via theoi.com on Astraka. Constellation Virgo. Hesiod calls her the daughter of Jove, Zeus, and Themis. Aratus says that she is thought to be daughter of Astreus and Aurora, Eos, who lived at the time of the Golden Age of men and was their leader. On account of her carefulness and fairness, she was called Justice, Dike, and at that time, no foreign nations were attacked in war, nor did anyone sail over the seas, but they were wont to live their lives caring for their fields. But those born after their death began to be less observant of duty and more greedy, so that Justitia, Justice, Dike, associated more rarely with men. Finally, that disease became so extreme that it was said the brazen race was born. Then she could not endure more and flew away to the stars. Nonnus Dionysiaca, folio 41-212, translation by Roos, Greek epic, 5th century AD. Virgin Astrea, nurse of the whole universe, cherisher of the golden age, received Bernoe, i.e. the goddess of the city of Beruit, which was famous for its law courts, from her mother, Aphrodite, into the embrace of her arms, laughing, still a babe, and fed her with wise breast as she babbled words of law. With her virgin milk she let streams of statues gush into the baby's lips, and dropped into the girl's mouth the sweet produce, honey, of the Attic bee. She pressed the bee's riddled travail of many cells, and mixed the voiceful comb in a sapient cup. If the girl, thirsting, asked for a drink, she gave the speaking Pythian water, kept for Apollo, or the stream of Ilissos, which is inspired by the Attic Musa, muse, when the Pyrean breezes of Phoebus, beat on the bank. She took the golden cornstalk, i.e. the star Spica, which Virgo holds in her hand, from the stars, and entwined it in a cluster to put round the girl's neck like a necklace. From Hestia's muse. Mythology tells that she loved mankind deeply and wanted to stay as long as possible, but could not stay and also maintain her purity. Finally, during the Iron Age, it was said that she ascended to Olympus, fleeing the growing wickedness of humanity, and became the constellation Virgo, to shine her light of purity on us from a distance. Legend also holds that one day Astrea will return, ushering in a new utopian golden age. The Golden Age is considered to be around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago during the dawn of agriculture, when humanity began cultivating crops like wheat and barley, which allowed for population booms and the rise of civilization. It was a more peaceful time, socially speaking, before enough wealth had been amassed in localized areas to begin fighting over, and settlements worth conquering were established. Note that while Spica is associated with all of the colors and the rainbow's full spectrum, an optical cone-shaped consequence of light refraction, often through reflective surfaces such as gems, glass, or water, she is especially allied to the bright green of new growth and the gold of harvest. Wheat begins as bright verdant shoots and aureates to indicate harvest time, which is a very literal manifestation. But it also refers to the metaphorical evolution of cultivating desirability and value, which can then be converted into currency, whether green, cash, or coin, gold. Cut wheat stalks are not food, like a diamond in the rough is not yet a ring. Both require laborious processing, which increases their worth, usefulness, and potentially aesthetic appeal. The more laborious and more meticulously executed, the more valuable. Note also that green is a term meaning inexperienced, especially in a new trade or craft, which also denotes some degree of purity and even virginity, freshness, and naivete. Key concepts of Virgo, in contrast to a well-seasoned operator creating the gold standard in a certain field. Fields, where the crops of commerce and research are planted and being worth their weight in gold, which essentially means valuable beyond reason, often for their utility. Such a person may also be called a golden goose, Lucian voice, bird. Chitra's spectral and painted nature is one of 10,000 reasons why birds are the animalic embodiments of Spica's arcana, since they are some of the most colourful creatures most people come across in daily life. Their wingedness allies them to Mercury, their beauty, grace and song-singing to Venus, and talons, claws, spikes by any other name, to Mars, their glory to Jupiter. Their eagle-eyedness aligns them with specificity and precision, and they're renowned eaters and transmitters of seed. They travel seasonally and cyclically to follow the food. They fly closest to the light of a star than any other creature on our planet and transmit knowledge through symbol and omen. The day we began staging for the Spica operation, a gardener noticed a crow bouncing around near the parking lot. He asked if he could have his partner come take it to the Wildlife Images, that same rescue centre we had just donated to in Buddy's honour weeks before, following Venus's Earthly Delights release. The man had a wing, symbol of the Virgin Maiden and Spica, on his shirt, and the jewellery-clad woman had a rose tattoo on her wrist, roses being the primary scent profile of VED, Venus Earthly Delights, but also relate to Libra as Venus ruled. Anyway, why is this important? Corvus is a neighbouring asterism to Spica, and the crow is sometimes regarded as Spica's enemy because it's waiting for any opportunity to snatch its glittering jewel for its own bounty. Materially, Saturn-ruled crows are the enemies of farmers who erect scarecrows, usually in wheat and corn fields, to keep them from eating their crops. The crow ended up having to be put down because of a poorly healed broken wing and another disease, so it was a mercy to be ushered into a more benefic incarnation. It also served as a godly omen that the enemy of Spica was removed from the property before the series' creation. Hawks, birds, and rainbows in general have been haunting me this never-ending launch cycle, with an incredibly notable experience documented once and twice 2 hours later on Instagram due to spectral developments. This hawk has been seen in the same place numerous times since, but never before, and hawks have been flying directly in front of my car's path over and over again. The subset was almost devoted to them. Another time, Austin and I were walking outside and a huge raven flew just feet overhead, so close that we heard and felt the air from the power of each giant wing flap. A phenomenon the likes of which neither of us had ever experienced. It was incredible. We then walked towards an open-air garage, which triggered a bird trying to escape through a closed window, interpreted as Spica wanting into the world, needing to honor rather than force the process. And a hummingbird nested in the wisteria at the center of headquarters, who kept flying in front of the workroom door. Then there were these Illenium Odyssey sinks at Sphere, itself a huge Thema Mundi manifestation. Also at the time of Spica's launch, the Eagles are in residency, which feature a phoenix followed by winged light angel maiden motif. You get a multicolored cosmic egg cracking open and the bird being born just past 2 minutes directly below, with super resonant lyrics and visuals all around. And they created a real glowing 3D phoenix to fly around the stadium. Seriously, click that. Not just a thing on a screen, an illusion, something real and mechanical in the actual 3D world. The above graciously brought to my attention by another Spica native, Adam Newton. Images of birds are used to impress Spica's powers in gems and metals, among others, which grant the following. Agrippa's 3 Books of Occult Philosophy, Book 2. Conferreth riches, and maketh one overcome contentions. It taketh away scarcity and mischief, which crows represent. Hermes on the 15 fixed stars, parts 1 and 3, the quadripartitus. Spica signifieth those things about which men laugh, jest, and are gladdened, maketh one wholly to conquer in causes, and it delivereth a man from difficulty and distress, causeth the bearer to accumulate much wealth. Hermes on the 15 fixed stars, Liber Enoch. Its virtue is to increase the wealth of him that beareth it worthily. It conquereth causes in the court of law, and extricateth a man from distress and difficulties. It will make him that beareth it very rich. This launch cycle oversaw our first price increase in many years, long overdue, and opened a new stream of income via the perfume house. Rainbows and beams are another really important key here. They show up around Spica energies all the time, as well as in alchemical iconography, where they represent differentiation from the one true source into constituent parts. These parts then make up the landscape of reality as we perceive it. All matter is made of light after all, and all is made of chitra. Raw honey under a microscope is also spectral, see the ritual honey listing, and it has been scientifically documented that the moment sperm meets the egg, when the opportunity for new life is created, a spark of very real light is instantly emitted. Gemstones and reflective surfaces like glass and water split and sort Spica functions, the wheat from the chaff, light. They are also capable of creating lasers, which are points or spikes of light. Speaking of Sir Isaac Newton, he was the first scientist to offer a truly convincing explanation of how and why rainbows appear in his 1704 work, Optics, other than the first 1-minute intro, which emphasizes that science and math reaffirm rather than diminish spiritual considerations, with which Spica agrees. The video below is a much more visually engaging, user-friendly explanation with more Gnostic implications. The video above gets really interesting in light of Spica at 13 minutes through 17:10 regarding cones, horns, and lasers. It then moves on to showcase how millions, billions, of individual raindrops are together responsible for casting rainbows, which is wildly illustrative of Indra's net in a real-world context. Your shadow is the center of your rainbow, the gnosis. This means no two people can ever see the exact same rainbow. In fact, your left and right eye don't even see the same rainbow. A rainbow is an optical illusion made unique for each perspective. May every rainbow encountered remind us of the interconnectedness of all things, and while each individual experiences their own unique vantage, they also play a vital role in reflecting and expressing collective experiences and consensus realities. A jewel that can refract light and shimmer with all the colors is one thing, but all this ties back to pearls, one of the key stones of Chitra, which show the inverse, representing the all as one in divine union. First thing to know is that when you mix all colors of light with one another, the result is white, the archetypal natural pearl symbolizing spiritual purity, creative bounty, and the divinity of creation typically look white, with a soft glow to the naked eye, but reveal themselves to be comprised of many-fold reflective colors under a microscope. And of course, pearls also come in a wide variety of natural colors and relate to foodstuffs more than any other gem. If you watch this video, the only natural pearl is shown quickly at the very beginning. You might have to rewind or you'll miss it. Now recall Spica's association with illusions. It moves on to show fake dyed and plastic pearls, like petro-derived synthetics used in you-know-what, which illustrate the same qualities from which precious properties and spiritual significance are derived, are either no longer or were never present. Which is also why remedial grade stones in the Jyotish tradition are never dyed. Indra's net, fourth mentions the charm, is not only a mythological item of tremendous import, it's a scientifically and spiritually resonant philosophy vital to the Buddhist and Hindu worldview, and it's made of either lustrous gems, like diamonds and pearls, or drops of water, which serve as prisms to separate light into individual colors, rainbows. These are at every intersection of an infinite spider-like web which reflects all of creation. Each gem, pearl, drop is a node of consciousness. You or I, for instance, a tree or a bird, which reflects against all of the other nodes, generating change that impacts the whole. This is a clear allegory for how all living beings are interconnected and co-reliant. But more subtly, how the entirety of the created universe is reflected in each and every individual at all times, relating to the holographic universe theory, which relate to lasers, which are used to make holograms, and the intense, unified sources of light lasers are composed of, which are created most usually from crystals, water, and mirrors, or again, potentially, peacock feathers, which is the upteenth way all in creation in the zodiac is made of Chitra. Anyway, See how easy it is to get lost in these woods. We'll explore all of that in depth in our upcoming May release. You know what else lasers are like? Spikes of light. Spikes, as in Spica. I had a meditation-induced vision this launch cycle of embodying a big, beefy unicorn with a glorious, Fabio-like mane, the focus going from the strength and beauty of its snow-white form to the thick girth at the base of its horn, tracing all the way up to the very tip. There was this sense of getting to be this pure, noble creature because all of the defense and weaponry needed was that tiny little point at the end of the spike. That only that much needed to be capable of violent acts because it was so sharp and so effective that its precision, specificity, and omnipresent persistence was capable of overcoming all obstacles. I told Austin next I saw him, and he said some things that led to wonderful insights. How unicorns in legend can only be captured or ridden by virgin maidens who are pure of heart. How alicorns, named for the unicorn's horn, also the term for unicorns with wings, are the opposite of prisms, which break light into rainbows by spiraling energy towards a specific unified point, which creates lasers. How unicorns are white, just as light is before it gets differentiated into the visible color spectrum. How rainbows and unicorns often appear together in modern motifs, and see My Little Pony and Lisa Frank. That spikes and alicorns are essentially magic wands for directing energy. That fine-tipped points serve to etch magic into gem and metal, and holy letters into papyrus and now paper, and thusly impress their marks most readily upon creation. What else is interesting, though, is that rainbows are still related to cone shapes, which horns are. Remember that Spica also connects to the azure dragon's horn in the Chinese system. Regarding the nature of what's on offer, Spica's electional architect Austin Coppock shares the waxing moon and great star Spica rise together in the east. The moon, that consummate transmitter of starlight, carries Spica's piercing light across the plane of the earth. The moon is not alone in this task, though. Exalted Jupiter looks down from the sky's zenith to bless this work with power and clarity. The moon and Jupiter are not only in perfect aspect, but also receive one another, Jupiter in the moon's sign and the moon in Jupiter's triplicity and face. This grants Luna the power to raise the incubated starlight to commanding imperial heights. Offering further assistance to the operation is clever Mercury. Already risen in the first house of the figure, Mercury, strong in both its triplicity and bound, is deeply entwined with Venus. The two are in mutual reception, spiraling together the technical and aesthetic, form and function, into a double helix of divine engineering. It is these very strands which Spica always seeks to weave together into excellence in creation, and thus the energy of Mercury and Venus's mutual reception is happily directed by the precise star. Carried by the moon, blessed by Jupiter, and with the powers of Mercury and Venus at its disposal, bright Chitra is here positioned to penetrate our sublunary realm with focused brilliance. A rainbow spiraled into a single radiant point, a many-hued blowtorch of smokeless starfire held firm in the deft hands of the divine artist. It's likely that this write-up will be revisited over time as more of Spica's mysterium make themselves not only clear, but capable of manifest articulation. She's the great priming force for all magic, all creation, and all illusion, and the usheress of humanity's golden age. While we live through historic and interesting times, let us keep our wits about us. and understand that while we cannot necessarily change the whole of the world, we can change ourselves and our closest circumstances, and that changes the world. This incarnation is an oyster, and we are indeed its pearl. The Creation of Birds by Remedios Varo, created circa 1957. Excerpts from the website linked in the title below. Emphasis mine. The artwork presents a scene that is rich in allegory and mystical elements, characteristic of Varo's oeuvre. At the center, an owl-like figure cloaked in a feathery raiment sits at a wooden desk, participating in the ethereal act of creating birds. The figure holds a piece of equipment resembling a violin bow and uses it to paint, or perhaps animate, the birds into a clear pane, which allows the creatures to take flight into their existence. The presence of a palette and the engagement in a careful, deliberate creation process suggests a metaphor for artistic creation itself, with the figure acting as an intermediary between the imagination and reality. Around this central act, various objects and forms contribute to the dreamlike atmosphere, a strange lamp-like structure that appears to be balancing celestial bodies, a bird observing from the floor, and additional avians taking flight through arched windows that bathe the scene in a soft, enigmatic light. The precise rendering of each element within the geometric space further emphasizes the thoughtful, almost scientific approach to what seems to be an otherworldly moment of genesis. A fulfillment note from the client community. So, most people know that we always have a themed launch candy. The subtitle for this iteration of Spica is called A Gem in the Hand. It's loosely inspired by the saying, "A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush," which encourages appreciation for what one is already in possession of, the good that is already around us, within us and our grasp. More esoterically, the idea is also a bit of a quantum joke. The bird in the hand is the bird in the bush, and vice versa. Seeing what we have in what we want, and what we want in what we already have, helps bridge the divide between current conditions and what we hope them to be, harmonizing them so that they become more of the same reality. Relating this way creates harmonies between our lived experience, current conditions, and those of our golden timeline, the term I've been toying with, which means our ideal. There will be more on this, including another hypnotic attunement towards its achievement, but the ideas are still being materialized and honed. I visualized someone inspecting a gem, either after it has been finished with a jeweler's loupe or in the rough, to decide what shape to make with what cuts. In that regard, the subtitle invokes careful analysis of whatever situation is at hand, as well as the architecture and design of anything new and unfinished we are seeking to make manifest in the world. As touched on in the write-up, Spica relates to jewels, especially pearls, diamonds, and emeralds, but also multicolored gems in general. The candy, therefore, was supposed to be beautiful, vibrant, and multicolored jewel pops with golden and glittering accents. But like all the other artisans riding Spica's wave, the candy maker was running behind. When the first batch arrived, they were not nearly as beautiful as they were pictured. Remember, Spica also has to do with illusion, and sin of sins, they also did not function well. If you tried to spread the tiny golden band, the candy broke off before you could even put it on, unless you were very careful. We wrote the maker about these concerns, and she decided to issue a refund for the rest of the order instead of shipping any more or addressing the issue. There's now no time to commission something dedicated to Spica, and we don't want to hold back fulfillment for candy alone. All this to say, the largest orders will be getting some of the few gem pops we do have. If you do want to wear it, Stabilize the gem with one hand as you spread the ring very slowly and carefully with the other. Of course, you can also just keep it on the altar. Smaller orders will be getting chocolates. We're sorry that they aren't themed to the launch per se, but chocolate is arguably way more delicious than a ring pop, so a lived reminder of life's many trade-offs. I'm following the sun that's setting in the west, recalling Spica's relationship to Libra starting in the Lahiri zodiac from the 7th DSC point. We're floating on a bed of feeling light. I'm falling like a feather, soft and light, with eternal love, stars above. All there is and ever was. I want it all. I want it all. A blade of grass, a grain of sand, the moonlit sea to hold your hand. And here's a little reminder of the different materia that Sphere and Sundry have created for the Spica series. That's it from me for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon with another one.